Jean Dubuffet, a name that reverberates through the post-war art world, not as comfort, but as a challenge. A rebel who taught us to look for beauty where the galleries refused to look, in the raw, the childlike, the scratched, the stained. Today, we walk that edge. We will see how a man from Le Havre used tar, gravel, and doodles to unsettle taste, to champion the margins, to invent a new language, art brut. Stay with me. Let your eyes and ears soften. We're entering work made from the world itself. Jean-Philippe Arthur Dubuffet was born in Le Havre in 1901 and died in Paris in 1985. He learned briefly at the Académie Julian, but his education unfolded more in the streets and workshops than in classrooms. He started in business, a wine and spirits family firm, then turned decisively toward art. That tension matters. He was a man who knew the world of commerce and, later, refused its comforts in search of something truer. By the 1940s, Paris had shifted. War had scarred the city, and artists were rethinking what painting could be. Dubuffet entered that conversation like a detonator, blunt, insistent, uncompromising. He made paintings, drawings, sculptures, and huge environments. And he collected what others discarded, drawings by children, by outsiders, by people whose work ignored galleries. From that collection, he shaped a theory and a practice. In 1948, Dubuffet introduced a phrase that would travel the world: art brut, raw art. He meant the art of outsiders, children, psychiatric patients, self-taught creators. He held these works as antidotes to a culture he found exhausted and refined to a fault. He was influenced by things that most critics ignored. He read Prinzhorn's studies of art by the mentally ill. He collected doodles and scraps, and he argued, fiercely, that these works contained a kind of unmediated truth. Dubuffet moved among surrealists and writers. He was close with André Breton for a period, and shared with those circles a taste for the unexpected. But Dubuffet remained distinct. His taste was not for the poetic sublime alone, but for the insistently pedestrian, the mark made without instruction. This is where his paradox begins. He wanted spontaneity, but also curated it. He exalted the marginal, and then brought it under the light of museums. That contradiction fuels much of his finest work. Dubuffet declared plainly, "Ugliness does not exist." He meant, there is no aesthetic law that should banish the raw mark, the dirty smear, the crude outline. He worked in what he called haute pâte, high pastes, building thick surfaces from paint mixed with sand, tar, gravel, even straw. The canvas became a landscape of material. The image sat atop a geology he himself had composed. The surfaces invite touch and reject slick illusion. You read them as object before you read them as representation. His lines are rough, his face is sometimes grotesque, his body's exaggerated. And that outspokenness is a moral choice. To refuse the cosmetic, to prefer testimony. Later, in the 1960s, came a very different turn, the Hourloupe. These are compositions of continuous looping line, doodles that became a style, a system, a cartography of the imagination. Bold outlines, cellular colors, white, red, blue, form a visual language at once playful and total. Whether encrusted in pasto or in looping color fields, Dubuffet chased the same thing: sincerity, a human mark that refuses to be polite. Now let's look closely, and I mean look as if for the first time. First, the haute pâte panels of the mid-1940s. Imagine a painted relief, its white crusts and ridges like weathered masonry. Faces appear, mask-like, blunt, emerging from the paste. These works are confrontational. They demand you reconsider what a painting can be: an object, a wound, a testimony. Second, the corps de dame drawings, playful and naked. Here the human body returns to a primal grammar, swollen, schematic, almost prehistoric. There is humor and compulsion. Dubuffet draws without flattery. The image reads as insistence rather than ideal. Third, the Hourloupe cycle. Started as idle doodles, evolved into a cosmology. The looping line divides the plane into irregular cells. Color and contour become architecture. In these works, everything looks animated, as if, at any second, the forms might rearrange themselves. Dubuffet turned the margin of scribble into an entire visual universe. Fourth, the environments and sculptures. L'Arbre Biplan, Jardin des Mailles, Tour aux Figures. These are cartoons in the round, monumental, white and black outlined, friendly and uncanny. Visitors step inside drawings. Scale becomes a gesture. Cartoons grown to the size of buildings, inviting play and discomfort at once. Across these works, object, drawing, environment, the through line is the same: art that refuses to be genteel. Dubuffet's shock eventually became canon. He showed in Paris and New York. Major retrospectives honored him at institutions like MoMA and the Centre Pompidou. The Fondation Jean Dubuffet preserves a huge archive of his work. He did not chase prizes, yet he was recognized. His works entered the great public collections: the Met, MoMA, LACMA, Centre Pompidou. The art world learned, grudgingly and then gratefully, to accept that roughness could be profound. What did Dubuffet leave us? He widened the field of who could make art and what art could be. From Hockney's early shock to Basquiat's street-born marks, artists found in him permission to be messy, to be immediate, to be themselves. If you stand before a Dubuffet painting, you're asked not to admire skill, but to recognize a voice. The voice is frank, sometimes crude, often hilarious, sometimes unsettling, but always human. So when you leave this video, look for the marks in your own life, the doodles, the scraped surfaces, the things you might otherwise discard. There is a kind of treasure there, waiting for a different kind of eye. Jean Dubuffet painted outside the lines, and in doing so, he changed how we see the lines themselves.